This is 5 steps to grow your laser eye surgery business. This presentation will be delivered at the London Vision Clinic for the Carl Zeiss Meditec user group meeting in November 2016. This presentation was recorded previous to that date. So first of all, about us, my name is Rod Solar from Livesey Solar, and this is Laura Livesey, who is my partner in the consultancy. The two of us, we have been working with private healthcare organizations for now almost 16 years. Here, I'll share a little bit about what we're about. We've had results since 1997. That's when we first became involved in marketing and sales, and shortly thereafter started working with private healthcare organizations in the year 2000. We've been healthcare specialists focusing on increasing sales since that date, and 97% of our clients to date have been in private healthcare. We have a UK-based. We're based, in fact, in London, and work out of London to serve clients internationally. So we have worked with clients in Canada, in the US, in Europe, in UAE, and other Middle Eastern states, and certainly, of course, the UK. Our clients see real business results within 3 months, and that's typically the reason they come to us. We engage with clients for various lengths of time for our engagements, but typically within 3 months they will see real business results in the form of incremental sales, and then further on to that they'll see layered on results from there. We've been advising the Carl Zeiss Meditec team, specifically their sales team, with regards to our experience in helping Zeiss and partnering with them to get lasers into healthcare clinics and into specifically NHS hospitals. And so this experience has given us the track record and the experience to be able to provide advice to Zeiss on helping them understand not only the laser eye surgery market, but also helping their customers to implement marketing plans and marketing tactics. This is our list of our clients. As you can see, we've worked with lots of different organizations throughout the UK, Europe, and also the Middle East. Here we list most of them. You'll recognize some familiar names, especially if you're involved in laser eye surgery. You'll recognize Optigra, which is or was at least the fastest private hospital and in fact business in the UK a couple of years ago. Their focus is mainly in refractive lens exchange, which they branded as ClaraView, but they also do laser eye surgery, and they have a Zeiss laser in London. We've also worked with Optimax at the value end of the market, which it was important to us because we wanted to see whether or not our approaches worked at both sides of the market. Typically, we work with high-end providers and that are offering services at the higher price point, what we call premium, or at least sub-premium. However, Optimax was an excellent opportunity to see if what we could do could benefit their business model, and it absolutely did. In fact, our records suggest that we, in fact, doubled their sales after an implementation of sales training. We've also worked with London Vision Clinic, and that's where this presentation is held. And we've been working with them since 2002. It's our longest relationship in the UK, and we currently offer them training on the telephone on an ongoing basis. EuroEyes is an organization in Germany who is the largest, at least at that time, and I still believe that today, chain of refractive surgery clinics across Germany and also some in Denmark. That was important for us to see if our applications would work in cross-cultural contexts and specifically in different languages. And it absolutely worked. They still use our models today to answer their phones and continue to train. Wellington Eye Clinic, we've also worked with them. They're a frequent contributor to many of the congresses that get together. That's run by Ed Toland. And absolutely, we worked with them to improve their telephone and also their consultation sales process. We've also worked with Focus, that's run by Dave Allenby, in order to provide them with the ability to create a sales process, and they became a very, very successful independent clinic led by one surgeon initially in central London, Marylebone area. And the list goes on and on. I'll also point out the fact that we've worked with many independent doctors, surgeons who want to get started, who don't have their own clinics yet. We've also worked with larger hospitals that offer private healthcare services in many, many different disciplines, and we've worked with disciplines including plastic surgery, dermatology, hair transplants, dental, you name it. And of course, in the middle of this slide, you can see numerous NHS hospitals. What they did is they invited us to assist them with transitioning their business units and launching specific refractive surgery services that would assist fund the other ophthalmology departments within their hospitals. And the two that we worked with most closely, Leeds and Sheffield, were both successful and continue to offer laser eye surgery services today. Moving on, I'll show you the footprint of what our international client base looks like. As you can see, we're predominantly focused in the UK, then Europe, then to a certain degree in the Middle East, and also in North America. I'll bring you a bit closer in now to the UK, and there you can see the numerous different clinical facilities that we've assisted clients in. This includes many of the chains, like I said. So we've traveled to most of these locations, visited the clinics, and assisted people in the clinics to perform better at consultations. We have also provided marketing advice for many of these clinics, and also assisted people to manage telephone conversations. So the gamut of services runs wide, and I'll explain a little bit about that as I go on. Now, specifically for the purposes of this talk, I want to talk a little bit about some of the Zeiss implementations that we've assisted with. This is the London Vision Clinic, and they're what you would call a Zeiss Center of Excellence, and I'm not sure if I'm using specifically the right wording, but they typically are a site that gets most of the new technologies first. So they got blended vision first, and they also got Smile first. And it was a really interesting opportunity to see how technology interacted as a factor, as an external factor, into a growing business that needed to develop itself in order to get its processes correct and right, and also understanding how that technology impacted the clinic as the clinic was starting to grow even further and began refining its processes. So that's a great example, and this talk live will be given at the London Vision Clinic, where if you do visit it, you'll have an opportunity to see what laser eye surgery success looks like. Like I said, our involvement with them began in 2002 and continues to this day. Then we have the Leeds Teaching Hospitals, and in 2006 through 2007, we assisted the Leeds Teaching Hospitals to develop St. James Laser Vision. And we assisted specifically and worked with James Ball and Andrew Morrell, surgeons there, to launch their service. And the intention of that service was to fund ophthalmology departments inside the Leeds Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust. The service continues to this day. It had some early growing pains, which were a bit of a challenge, and I've been in touch with both these gentlemen over time, working with them in various different iterations of their careers. And however, I do know that St. James Laser Vision continues to this day, offering services to the Yorkshire area and specifically in Leeds. Next, we also worked and helped develop the Sheffield Teaching Hospitals, and that is in Sheffield, obviously. That happened between 2007 and 2008. Their response to our assistance was very involved and very hands-on, and they did many of the things we asked them to do, and therefore had tremendous success in their first year. In fact, exceeded expectations and targets by significant margins in the first year. And we love to see a case study like that because they did pretty much everything we asked them to do. Similar to an extent to London Vision Clinic, who also did many of the things that we asked them to do and followed them very closely. And we see the differences in terms of the success rates. We've also worked with Moorfields. It's also another Zeiss installation. Now, with Moorfields, we didn't assist them in the marketing side. We mainly focused on helping them with customer service and specifically in helping the secretaries of the many consultants that work there to assist them with their call handling approaches. And we did see improvements in conversion rates. That was in 2009. And now, Moorfields wasn't involved with Zeiss at that time. However, I also understand that we have not been involved with Moorfields since then, and their Zeiss implementation, I'm not sure how well it went. You'd have to talk to the Zeiss people about that. But from what I understand, it's not heavily used. And that brings us to Optigra. For Optigra, we have been helping them since 2011 and continue to assist them to this day. What we mainly do there is we focus on training when it comes to helping them convert more people on the telephone to consultations and also converting more consultations into paid treatments. Now, Optigra does many things, and most of our effort was focused on the refractive lens exchange, which was then known as Claraview. But of course, there was ample opportunity to apply that knowledge to laser eye surgery and converting patients who were calling, who generally just simply wanted to get their eye problems fixed. And when our clients were faced with that, they were able to then convert those potential patients. Their initial conversion rates were around, well, let me put it this way. I can't share specific numbers, but the telephone conversion rate doubled, and you can imagine what that means to a business. Essentially, it doubles the business, everything else being equal. And fortunately, as well, the consultation rate also increased significantly, which demonstrated that the consultations that were generated by those phone calls were in fact highly valuable consultations, good leads. And so they improved dramatically during our years of involvement with them, so much so that they've invited us back now on our third interaction and engagement with them to assist them to progress further up the conversion rate chain. And so why do all of these clients work with us? Why do they choose us? When there are lots of different organizations that can assist them? Well, we feel that it's mainly due to the fact that what we do works and helps them grow. And we very much feel that that is most likely as a result of our in-depth knowledge of laser eye surgery and our deep and broad experience in the private healthcare arena. We pretty much have, like I said, worked with almost everyone involved in this industry in one way or the other in the UK, and are slowly making inroads to expand into other areas around the world to assist laser eye surgery surgeons to grow their practices as well. So all of this experience tends to feed back into more and more knowledge and more expertise, and we're able to therefore really choose the things that are most important to do, as opposed to squander budget and time on things that are less important to do. And we've taken now all of this experience and distilled it into a model that we call the Livesey Solar Patient Acquisition Model. And I'll explain this model as I go for a moment. This is the model that begins with the word of mouth at the top, that essentially the premise that there's way fewer people that know you than people who are potentially searching for your service. And so what we aim to do is, of course, get both of them, but what we really want to do is get those who are searching for our service to raise their hands so that we can connect with them. And we do that mainly through Google. So we've been involved in the internet for many, many years now, and it's at least now 20 years since we put together our very first website. And so we know this industry very well. And what we do for our clients usually to get them started is to assist them with paid campaigns and also organic campaigns. Now, the difference is right in the name. Paid campaigns, you pay per click, like AdWords, and organic campaigns are search engine optimization, so SEO. And together, many people refer to them as search engine marketing. And that is combined with website design, the first step in generating a market for your business. So combined with search engine marketing, we have website design. And the purpose of that website design is really to convert more visitors from a website into inquiries. And you can see now in the background, we have what's called a funnel. And it's a funnel-like instrument there that is meant to figuratively display the amount of people that are going through the funnel. Now, of course, this funnel has many leaks, and we're going to get into what causes those leaks in the presentation. But this funnel has been demonstrated time and time again is a very accurate description of how this process works. So like I said, the first step is website design and search engine optimization, and the purpose of that is to generate more visitors to a website and convert them into inquiries. Now, once they're converted into inquiries, what we must do is we have to convert these people into patients, and how we do that is over the telephone. The telephone remains the single most important tool that any clinic has, perhaps second only to their website. Now, the telephone is still massively important because nobody really buys laser eye surgery on the over the internet through an e-commerce shopping cart. What they do is they pick up the phone. The vast majority, some will email, of course, but typically you don't have any kind of real conversion until you actually have somebody on the phone. And we assist with clients in helping them train their staff to improve the number of people that call that convert into consultations. And that's where the next step is. The third step is consultation skills training, which is all about converting consultations into paid treatments. And so we come in and work with people from receptionists to optometrists to healthcare technicians that are taking the photographs to the surgeons, everybody really, to assist them in working as a team to convert more patients through the consultation into paid treatments. Number 4 is the service. And also what we look at this in terms of very specifically is how does price interact with the service. Now, price isn't indicated on this diagram, but it's one of those things that definitely affects funnels. If you think about higher priced items, they're going to be harder to sell because you're not relying on a price in order to sell that item. What you are relying on is differentiation and the ability to express that differentiation on your website, on the telephone, and in consultations, and also after a treatment occurs, because what you're most keen to get in this kind of business is follow-up through referrals. And what you want patients who are happy, which is the end goal of this whole process, to refer more and more patients. And we have specific processes that we suggest for people to take advantage of, to apply themselves to create those opportunities. And we also help people with social media to leverage some of those opportunities that exist online. Throughout this whole process of step 1 through 5, we are experimenting, we are analyzing, we are reporting, and then we're adapting. So we're consistently finding ways to improve these processes for our specific clients in order to help them grow. Now, I'm going to give you an example of what these steps look like in action. This is how we typically will look at a business, and I think it's very useful for anybody watching this video if they run their own business, specifically a laser eye surgery business or any private healthcare business, to look at their business in this way. You're going to need to be able to collect some information from your records in order to help you understand where these numbers are coming from. So first of all, we have leads, and these are interchangeable with the word inquiries. And these are the number of people that call you. Now, it's not just people that call you for appointment changes, and it's not just people that call you for follow-up visits. These are brand new entries into the database. So we measure a lead based on a minimum data set. And what that means is that we have to have at least a name, a telephone number, and usually that can be enough, but we also like to get a lead source and also an email address. But that minimum data set is what characterizes a lead, and that's how we count it. And then the conversion rate is the number of leads that convert into new consultations, which is in pink there. And that conversion rate is a specific factor that we attempt to change and improve over time. Now, the close rate is, it's essentially another conversion rate, but we call it close rate in order to avoid confusion, is we take new consultations and try to convert as many as we can via the close rate into new patients. And that's what that equation looks like there. The number of transactions per customer, that is typically 2. Because most people have 2 eyes. Now, we appreciate the fact that not everybody has 2 treatments, despite the fact they have 2 eyes, but typically that number ranges to about 1.8 to 1.9. So that is typically a reasonable estimate of 2 in order to do the math reasonably accurately. Now, the average price, that's an important value as well, and we've set that in because that all goes into the equation as well. That gives us our sales per month and also our annual sales. So let's have a little look at what an example of a very typical starting practice might look like. I've seen many practices with these kinds of numbers. Again, these are practices that have not received any kind of advice. They have just started out. They've got the kit, they've put out their shingle, and they're starting to get a little bit of throughput in terms of leads. Now, I've given some numbers here. For example, this fantasy clinic has 5 leads. They convert at 20%. That means that there's 1 consultation that arises. That consultation converts by 50%. Now, as you can see, we have 1 there because it's rounded up because we can't have less than 1 patient. The number of transactions per customer is 2, and the average price is 1,000. The sales per month in this particular example is 1,000 because we are dealing with not a full patient. So therefore, the annual sales are 12,000. And this can be the kind of practice that you might expect to see in a lone wolf scenario where an individual is just doing some laser eye surgery on the side. This typically cannot fund any sort of established clinic, but it's more of a single surgeon doing their thing. So if we were to become involved, then our first step typically would be to increase the number of leads. And the reason we choose that as our first step is because you can't really do much with conversion rate if your number of leads is so little. So we typically aim to increase the number of leads. And this factor is not unrealistic. I mean, bringing 5 leads to 10 is not difficult to do. And so that's something that we would aim to do first. And as you can see, all the numbers remain equal. But still, we have a 24,000 on annual sales as opposed to 12,000, which effectively doubles the business. Now, if we take it to step 2 and we look at the call, that's the second step, which is telephone training. You can see the leads stay the same. We don't increase that. We'd love to if we could, but at the moment right now we're leaving that in the example. The conversion rate goes to 50% from 20, and it's totally doable. In fact, we've worked with clients that ended up with conversion rates that exceed 80%. And so as you can see, the new consultations rise dramatically from 2 to 5, where we started at 1. The conversion rate or close rate at the appointment remains 50%, and the new patients that arise are 3 now. 2 transactions per 3 at £1,000 per transaction is 5,000. Now we've got a little bit of a practice going, and the practice is now making £60,000 a year simply by changing those 2 things. They generated more leads and they increased their conversion rate. Okay, but we're not done yet. Number 3, step 3 is meet, and there you can see now that the 10 figure along leads has persisted, and we have also persisted the 50% lead to consult conversion rate. We still have 5 consultations, but now we're closing more of them. So now we've done some consultation training where we have improved the conversion rate from 50% to 80%. What that does is it raises the number of new patients from 3 to 4, which generates, when you look at everything going down, an annual sales of 96,000. So that's quite a far distance now from 12,000 pounds. We've got quite a large factor of difference there, and that's significant growth. But we're still probably not at the point where we can start our own clinic. We need to do something different. Now, the price is going to also be important, and in this model, we have raised the price by a small percentage there and brought it from 1,000 to 1,200. And there you can very clearly see that the annual sales is dramatically affected, because when you increase a price in a fixed cost business like laser eye surgery, we typically don't erode we don't erode profit, of course. That number goes straight to profit. And that's why raising the price is very important in this stage of business in order to build money, funds, resources to get to the next step, which is to increase the number of leads again. Now, before we spend more money on marketing, now we haven't spent any more money on marketing yet. It's mainly been the first marketing spend in step 1. Usually that involves creating a website and creating other things that are important and doing some SEO. And maybe some paid. Step 2 was doing a little bit of telephone call training. Step 3 was doing some consultation training. Step 4 was increasing the price, and the way we approach that is by doing a little bit of marketing training with the owner or whomever is actually setting up the price to assist them on how to improve a price properly without losing customers. And then we get on to step 5. And step 5 is now when we're going back to step 1, and we're increasing the number of inquiries that are calling you. So now in this example, we have raised from 10 that has persisted through the steps and now have raised it to 15. All the other numbers have remained the same, and as you can see now, the leads become a massive lever. Because everything else is working well, we can now increase the annual sales from 115, which is starting to look a little bit more like, a good percentage of a practice, to something that is beginning to look like the beginnings of a full-time practice, and that's 172. Now, these numbers, of course, if we started at and now with 50, of course we would end up with 150 on step 5. So that that number is completely dependent on what we encounter. But we do see these kinds of increases pretty reliably when we put these 5 steps into action. So let's have a look a little bit at the 5 steps and the impact they have on revenues. The left-hand axis is pounds, and the bottom axis is not years or length of time. Rather, it's when you introduce the steps. And these steps are layered incrementally on top of each other in order to generate a synergistic effect. So here you can see status quo. It's a very small line there, and because we have got quite a ways to go, we start to do a little bit of marketing, and we increase that line somewhat. And the big returns begin once you start converting those leads into appointments, because that's what's closest to money at this stage. And you can see a dramatic increase there. These numbers, these bar graphs are linked directly to the example I just provided you. And again, this is on an annual basis. And then we go to Meet, which is a consultation training, and it nearly doubles the scenario now. We increase the price, and we get a little extra bump there, and then we improve the ability to generate more leads through effective customer service. And with this, we are again seeing big gains, getting us at a much higher number. So this graph does not have to take you 5 years. It's not 1 step per year. In fact, some clients choose to do all 5 steps in the first year. Some clients choose to spend longer. That's entirely up to you in terms of how you approach your business, how aggressive you want to be, and how much investment you want to put into the game. Now, how will these 5 steps impact your business? We already saw an example of what the revenue potential is, but now we're going to talk a little bit about the nature of laser eye surgery in terms of what kind of business model it is. Now, in laser eye surgery, what we have is a scenario where we get patients in. They come in as inquiries. They become customers for the briefest of moments, And after they become customers, they bounce out of your clinic and become patients out. Now, this is important because, as you can imagine, if you have an equal number of patients in and an equal number of patients out, your inflows equal your outflows, and therefore you have to maintain a high number of patients coming in order to have enough customers. The minute you drop the generation of new patients is the minute you will almost immediately see a reduction in customers. And a reduction in customers, of course, means a reduction in sales. Now, what you must do is you need to consistently focus on marketing and sales. Anyone who wants to get into laser eye surgery for any particular reason has to understand this. They need to get into laser eye surgery from a marketing and sales perspective. They have to understand that that's an important aspect of their plan, and they have to understand how to make that work. So marketing and sales is an important part of laser eye surgery, so much to suggest that laser eye surgery is in fact a marketing and sales business. Now, that's a little bit foreign to many doctors, which is why I recommend either generating some business skills of your own, and you'll also need the time to implement all of this. And also, if you can't do that, then you have to partner up with somebody with really good marketing and sales skills. And it has to be somebody typically at a senior level who can think strategically and isn't just good at talking to people. But you also have to look at specifically somebody to partner with who's external to your business. And that would most likely be a consultant who has seen laser eye surgery before, who understands it, who can hit the ground running and understand how to implement a process that will improve your business reliably over time to generate more and more patients in. Now, laser eye surgery isn't just a marketing and sales business. There are also there's also another part of this loop, which is the referral loop. And patients out can become referrers. Now, they all say they will be, and they don't always become that, but it's important to ensure that as many potential patients that are coming out are also become referrers. They refer more patients in, and as you can see, the cycle just then begins to become a loop, and it's a positive feedback loop. This is the first feedback loop that we've seen of many of the loops that I will introduce you to in this video, but this is the first one, which suggests that laser eye surgery is not just a marketing and sales business, but it's also a customer service business. And so what you see here is the importance of not just getting the marketing and sales right, but also the customer service right. Interestingly, this has a lot to do with your results. They have to be good, but even more to do with how you treat people. And it's the emotional IQ that comes into play here, and the quality of your team, because you can't do all of this yourself. So it's essential that you surround yourself with people you can trust to do an excellent job in not only marketing and sales, but also in customer service. Now, let's talk a little bit about the 5 steps and how they stimulate growth. What do you actually have to do? Now, most people, when they think about marketing, they think about the different tactics like advertising and perhaps radio ads and SEO and that type of thing. We've listed some of the most frequently used and reliable techniques when it comes to marketing, and that's all part of step 1. Of course, we do all of these things, but you can get anyone to do these things for you, or you can do them yourself if you have the expertise and the time. If you don't have the expertise or the time, then you need to have the money in order to purchase these services for someone to do them for you. And you can see a list. I'm not going to go through all of them there. You can read them. But that is an example of some marketing tactics that we have found have been very, very effective. Because we've been in this industry now for, like I said, over 16 years, we're very able to separate the wheat from the chaff and ensure that we're focusing almost exclusively on non-experimental tactics. We are focusing mainly on tactics we know work. Next, we have the call, and these are the things that we do to improve step 2, which is the telephone training and the email follow-up that follows. So everybody who gets invited into your practice to have a phone call. If they don't necessarily convert, they all get followed up. And even those who might not be ready to yet convert are also followed up. So this is step 2, the call, and these things work to improve conversion rates. And what follows there is step 3, which is meet. That's the appointment training, which is also supplemented by email follow-up. Following that is step 4, managing the price through marketing training, and we or anyone else can supply you with advice on how to change your price in order to increase your volumes and not lose volumes, because there's not much sense in increasing price and just losing volumes. You end up in the same spot you began with, although perhaps just a little less busy. Step 5 is serve, and serve is all about using the marketing tactics that you've already used to a degree, and adding some new ones in order to improve customer service in your practice so that you can get more referrers. And that loops back to market because we are looking at getting more clients. And you can see there that we've also added some additional tactics to implement into the marketing mix so that you can now graduate to those tactics now that you've got the foundation in place. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next step, which is positive and negative feedback loops. And I'll explain to you what a positive feedback loop is. What it is it's an interaction of factors that tend to reinforce each other. So when you change something in a particular direction, it keeps moving in that direction. In other words, if you increase business, you will get more and more business through the other aspects of the feedback loop. So I'll give you the most important example is, for example, you get more web visits, and you do that through good design and also through good search engine optimization and through potentially search engine marketing campaigns like paid search. Essentially, you get more web visits, and those web visits convert into more calls. Because you have such good design, good user experience, your website's fast, it all works, everything, people find what they're looking for when they're looking there. That then, after they've called, changes into more first appointments, so that propels that factor in the loop. More first appointments result in more treatments, which is of course what you want and what is closest to money. And more treatments result in more referrals, which in turn results in more web visits because you are consistently communicating with those people who have gone away, have become ex-patients, but still are going out into the community and potentially talking you up and saying how wonderful you are as a surgeon or as a hospital or as a clinic, and become now the primary source of new inquiries and specifically new web visits. So there are things to do that go beyond simply hoping that happens. These things can actually be stimulated. Now, that is a positive feedback loop, and that's the kind of thing that we aim to do with every client that we work with. We aim to get them into one of these positive feedback loops because if they settle into this groove, things get better and better and better every single year. Now, there is an alternative, of course, which is a negative feedback loop. And what a negative feedback loop does is, unfortunately, any impacts you make to the system end up creating more chaos and end up unraveling the loop. So I'll give you an example using this same approach. Instead of more web visits, you actually result in more calls? No, they actually result in no more calls. So the calls remain the same. And why did that happen? Is because you have poor usability, or user experience, and poor design on your website. So that results in no more calls than you had to begin with. We also have another trapdoor, which is poor call handling. You might get more calls, but if you don't handle those calls properly, then you'll end up with fewer appointments. That also helps to unravel the loop. Let's say you manage to get a few people in the door, but you bungle those appointments, so you have poor appointment handling, and then therefore you get fewer treatments as a result. And beyond that, if you have poor customer service, you'll end up with fewer referrals as a result of your treatments, which ends up then adversely impacting the number of web visitors you get. So then you end up with fewer visitors, and because you've either done poor follow-up or you haven't interacted with people after they become patients, numerous reasons exist for that. So this is what's known as a negative feedback loop. And this is something you don't want to get into because it just unravels your plans and makes life so much harder. You don't want to be in the red, consistently bleeding out patients and bleeding out opportunities, ergo bleeding out money. You want to be in the white. You want to be in a loop that consistently propels itself to generate higher and higher growth. Now, this is just about the kinds of things that you can do inside. We also have to consider that you also have to continuously go back to the well and generate more web visits. And if you stop doing search engine marketing and if you stop doing search engine optimization, you'll end up with fewer web visits on top of the results you've already had. So that's an important thing to think about. Now, most of the externalities that we're going to also talk about, because these are internals, the externalities affect fewer web visits and more web visits. But I'm going to show you that in coming up. So we have numerous different externalities that we have to contend with. We can't just worry about what's internal to the business. We have to think about the political and regulatory landscape and how will that affect. It might be positive, it might be negative. But if it affects anything, it'll probably affect the number of web visits you have, or potentially could affect other aspects as well, like the kind of treatment that you do, or what you can do on the phone calls, or what you can do on the appointments. Any number of things could be affected by the political and regulatory environment that may change either positively or negatively. The environmental aspects as well create issues. And with that, we have lots of factors at play that may influence whether or not people will visit you because they want to do this, or fewer people decide that they want to follow up with you. We also have legal factors. If legal factors change, they might also affect your business either positively or negatively. We also have technological factors, which we'll get into a little bit more closely later. Improvements in technology will affect your business positively if you're the one who has them. However, improvements in technology that you don't have access to will potentially negatively impact your business. Competition is also a factor. If the more aggressive your competition is, the harder it's going to be for you. The less aggressive they are, the easier it's going to be for you. We also have to consider the economic factors. Economies go in cycles. Sometimes there are bull periods, sometimes there are bear periods, highs and lows, and we've got to be aware that economic factors can also impact the business health. And of course, social demographic factors. So as people age, perhaps they need less of your product, perhaps they need more of your product. Perhaps people's lifestyles change. It's entirely possible that people start to enjoy the alternatives to what you offer more than they might enjoy what you offer. So all of these things contribute to the success or failure of your business. Now we're going to talk a little bit more closely on the technological impacts of loops. Now, obviously, like I said earlier, loops have positive impacts, which I've illustrated here in white, and they also have negative impacts, which I've illustrated here in red. And the fact is that you can't, as a business owner, control either the direction, positive or negative, or the strength of these impacts. So they might be very strong, they might be very slight. So it's important to build an insurance policy, if you will, around technological impacts so that you can be ready for them. So if you adopt the technological impact, you will in fact have much more success as a result of having your systems correctly set up and having a feedback loop that is positive instead of negative. If your competition adopts the technological impact, you can withstand that competitiveness because, again, your systems are solid. If you had less than solid systems, you would, potentially squander the opportunity that a technological advantage would give you and potentially be subject to even more threat if a competitor had a technological impact that you didn't have. So what we're after here really is in this positive loop is we want this loop to get tighter and tighter and tighter. And the more tight it gets, the more you'll be insured against negative technological impacts, and the more you'll be able to take advantage of positive technological impacts. I'll give you some examples. Let's say, for example, a new laser comes out that has lots of attributes that the competitive lasers don't have. It allows you to do new treatments, or safer treatments, or faster treatments, or more comfortable treatments. Well, if you have that technological impact, then that advantage allows you to communicate that more on your website. It allows you to communicate it in calls. Again, if you have a system, you can manage to do that appropriately. It allows you to communicate and express that advantage in first appointments if you have a process. It allows you to produce, obviously, impact the treatments, and of course, sometimes in the appointments as well, the actual quality of those appointments and those treatments. It'll potentially give you better results, which will generate more referrals, and more referrals tend to talk and who are happier tend to talk more about the things that they are benefiting from, which generates more web visits. So you can see here that there are tremendous advantages as a result of having nice, tight, positive feedback loops. The alternative, of course, is if you have a negative feedback loop. And let's look at the diagram there. So here you can see what is happening with your negative feedback loops. When I remove the positive, everything is leaky. Everything has holes. So if your technological impact is strong, in other words, it's positive for you, you're unable to take advantage of it as well as you otherwise could, because you're not very good at communicating it on your website. You're not very good at expressing it on your phone calls and using it as a tactical advantage. You're not very good at actually implementing it in your appointment schedule. You're not very good at actually treating people with it because you don't have access to it, or you do, but you don't necessarily have enough people who go through the process in order to actually treat them with this new technology. You end up with fewer referrals, and therefore you end up with less marketing and less web visits. So as you can see, what this does is it doesn't allow you to take advantage of these technological advantages that might come down the pipe. Now, if somebody else has this technological advantage that you don't have, if it's a competitor that has this advantage, then it's even worse, because not only do you have your processes messed up, but you also are subject to the adverse technological impacts because your competitors have something you don't, and therefore they are comparably viewed as more attractive to your marketplace than you are. So the visual effect of this is like a spiral that continues to expand to the point where it goes out of control. So these are the kinds of things that you have to think about surrounding your externalities. You can't necessarily control what technology will be available to for you down the road, but you are able to control what's internal to you, so that when the technical advantages are in your favor, you can take advantage of them, and when they're against you, you can resist the advantages and still provide the services that you need to in order to maximize your business. So let's just talk in summary for a moment. We've covered a lot of ground. I'm just going to ask a few questions to think about. I'm not going to answer these questions, obviously, because I've answered them already in the presentation, but I will, in the blog post that follows this video, answer these questions in the text. So make sure you read down to the questions that I ask and answered below. So the questions to think about are: what are the 5 steps that help you grow a laser eye surgery practice? How do the 5 steps grow your sales? What do we specifically do to improve those sales using the 5 steps? This is for you in your context. Which of the 5 steps should you employ first? You have obviously many choices. Should you just go for step 1 because it's called 1, or should you jump to step 5? Which is better for you? Number 4, what are positive feedback loops? Explain what that is. What are negative feedback loops and how do they impact your business? What is an example of an external input into a feedback loop? We just talked about one now. And what are some of the positive and negative effects of this input, depending on whether or not you have a positive or negative feedback loop? So think about those questions before you look at the answers that we give you below. They will be instructive, and they will certainly help you understand this material better. And certainly if you have any further questions that exist beyond the questions I've illustrated, make sure you ask them as comments in the blog post that this video is found in. Now, if you are new to our blog, please make sure that you sign up. People at the presentation will have the opportunity to sign up by text. You can do this if you wish. However, it's much easier for you to simply go to the right-hand side where you see a little image that says sign up to our blog, and there you'll be able to give us your email address so that we can continue to provide you with information like this on an ongoing basis so that you can help grow your laser eye surgery business. Thanks very much.